All right, welcome everyone. We're going to start the Mount Holly Township Council meeting of Monday, June 9th, 2014. Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. The notification notice, please.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975. Certification is on file in the office of the Township Clerk.
Okay, the first thing we have is communications, and we have CME Engineering here to Kurt. We want to give a presentation on the Phase 2 of the Mill Dam improvements. This is for application for this year's 2014 grant application.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I left so quickly I forgot my easel, but I don't know where you want me to stand. I also have some reduced.
If we take a chair back, just push it forward, just might just leave it on there for like.
It's not on the camera. That's okay. And also the cell phone is used for.
Rubber back.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Kurt Otto from CME Associates. I'm here to present and make recommendations for the Township's 2014 application to the Burlington County Open Space Grant. Last year at this time we came forward, we focused on Mill Dam Park. Mount Holly was one of 3 towns to receive the full $250,000 in funding. Phase 1 improvements actually started last week and they should be done shortly. We're hoping July, early July. Phase 1 improvements included the basketball court. They included an asphalt walkway from the existing parking lot to the basketball court, and also some improvements to the playground area. I stopped out there on the way here. It's excavated. Basically, we're trying to increase what was a lack of drainage at that playground area. So we're going to excavate it out, redo it, put in a paved entrance area with some benches. It'll come out very, very nice. Phase 2, what we'll call Phase 2, would be installation of 2 new tennis courts at the location of the previous roller hockey rink, the completion of the paved path, and also a mobile stage or a showmobile. I have some exhibits for Mayor and Council. They have not seen them already. They're reduced copies of this rendering and also the proposed mobile stage. Hi, how you doing? We're proposing once again to apply for the full $250,000. I'm pretty optimistic with the county's support that we will get that. And this would basically be what the park would look like hopefully next summer, based on when the applications come through. Or when the approvals come through from the county. I also have here a breakout of some other items as far as the cost estimate goes. Items 1 through 11 and item 18. Our rough cost estimate for those items is around $280,000, but we received some pretty good bids with Phase 1, so we're pretty optimistic this go around in Phase 2.
Great.
So what we're requesting is a resolution similar to last year, authorizing the application be made. The applications are due on Friday, so I'll have to work with Eric on that right away.
You can pass a resolution tonight authorizing them to put it in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We're going to put it on a, if I just have a motion, if council pleases, to add a resolution number 2014-87 to the agenda, which will be, and George, if you can give us the proper verbiage for that, but it'll be
A resolution authorizing
Authorizing
CME to submit the grant for the 2014 County Board of Freeholders Open Space Grant.
We'll get a copy so you can sign.
Yeah, and I'll work with Eric's office on the write-up and the signature of gaps.
Yep. Yeah, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Have roll call, please.
Mr. Belton?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
So what we'll do, that's now gonna be item number 7 of the agenda, and we'll vote on that when we get down there. That's now on the agenda.
That can be part of the consent agenda.
Yeah, part of the consent agenda. Is there anything else, Kurt?
Not yet. You don't have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Lou or Jason or Dwayne, any questions on the items that are in the list? Obviously, once we can go through a pick and choose when we get down to it, but those are the improvements recommended.
Well, this is just going for the grant, then we'll
Correct.
have decisions.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
decisions,
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Please reflect the record. Mr. Belton is now here.
No, do it before the vote.
Sorry. Next thing on the communications, we have a winner of the second place Recycle Art Contest here, Tina Brondenecker. Is that correct? Did I spell that right? Brandecker. Sorry. She won second place in the 2014 pre-K to second grade portion of that contest, and her project was called Tina's Recycling Project. And if we can, I'd like Tina and her parents to come up here. I'd like her maybe come up here behind us. We get a picture. I also want to get and note the record that the township as well. I'm going to sign it. We'll get a letter drafted acknowledging the accomplishment, and then you can put that in her portfolio for someday moving forward on what she accomplished.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Hey, can I stand on the desk?
And we'll get this on the website too. Yeah, you got this. Wait, come on in here. Come on. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
All right, ready? Say cheese.
Take it a little bit, please, too. Take it, hold on. Thanks. Thank you very much. I'll get you guys copies as well. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, double. And Chair, if we can get a letter drafted, in this photo, I'll get the sign the letterhead. Absolutely. Send it out. What's your address? Can you?
17 Thornton.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next we have is the approval of minutes. This is the May 12, 2014 regular meeting minutes. Does anybody have any questions or corrections for those meeting minutes? If not, can I have a motion of approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'm going to bring him up with the ordinance.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
Have roll call, please.
Mr. Belton?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes. Okay, now we have an ordinance on second reading. This is an ordinance amending the code of the Township of Mount Holly as it pertains to the Historic Preservation District. We have Kevin Reese here from Alamo Engineering with a map of the underlying area and also the availability to ask any questions or comments. Did you want to say a few things prior to opening up the public? Or would you like to have us have a discussion first and then you respond to the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to do it any way that you would normally do it here. I can go first and do a brief presentation.
I would say, yeah,
I think it's a good idea to have Kevin do a 4 or 5 minute summary
absolutely.
as to how we got here, because I know Kevin put a lot of work into this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and George, and members of council. just going to spread a couple things out. This will just take a few seconds that way.
Take your time,
If
Kevin.
anybody fires any questions at me, I'll try and jump into each document.
While he's setting up, I just want to, for the public's benefit and for, I know I've had many conversations with the mayor and Eric. As everybody knows, there was some issues with the Historic Commission. There were some open positions on it. Additionally, there were some what we consider to be some significant inconsistencies in the ordinance that were determined. I had recommended that we contact Kevin because he has extensive experience in historic preservation, and Alima was obviously already the city's engineers, because Kevin did a lot of work in another municipality that I was aware of. Really, I'd say he's not going to make his head too big here, but almost single-handedly responsible for straightening out and fixing what were clearly some problems with the Historic Commission in another municipality where they had interpreted it absolutely incorrectly for at least 10 years until he became actually a member of that board and in that place. So I know, so he was recommended, he came on, he looked at it, we found a lot of inconsistencies here. I had some discussions with him, and he essentially rewrote the ordinance. I then reviewed it in detail with him, getting us where we are, but I know he looked at all the historical records in relation to that and how we got here and in coming to this ordinance.
Thank you, George. And I'm ready. Well, I appreciate George's comments, but one of the things that makes my job possible when I tackle stuff like this is assistance from the mayor and governing body, planning board, and the residents of the community, and particularly the commissioners once they're up and running and are active and are following the ordinances and the guidance that they are given in the ordinance. But also when a question is raised regarding an issue that may be not addressed within the ordinance, that they reach out to the municipal attorney, which is the attorney for the Historic Commission, according to the way the ordinance is set up here and in many other towns. And that's something that's important that occur when there is a question, because volunteers, although they're great and can put in all the time and effort and follow the ordinance as best they can, when they need professional guidance, they should be encouraged to reach out and follow the ordinance and do that with George's office. With that being said, I did review all of the Historic Commission documents that I was able to locate on file here in the municipal building. And one of the things that is a critical component to the Historic Commission and the Historic District within Mount Holly is the 1994 forward report that was prepared in Mount Holly back in 93, 94. And that's this document here. And one of the things that we corrected within the ordinance was that this document contains recommendations regarding whether a property be designated as key contributing or non-contributing. And that's important because it's that designation according to your master plan and your ordinance that guides the Commission in its review of an application, should an application need to be filed with the Historic Commission. So one of the things that we had done in redrafting the ordinance was actually reference back to this document rather than having an open statement within the ordinance that until a property is designated it should be considered contributing, which was a little odd. That meant that everybody was contributing unless somebody made a determination otherwise, which, although this document had been done, there wasn't a clear reference to it for somebody to go and look for it. So that's something that's been corrected. Now, one of the things that we also did in reviewing that document, there was a series of recommendations that were made regarding district boundaries, but also changes to the zone map relative to where those boundaries should be for the historic district. Now, if you're familiar with the existing historic preservation district ordinance, it does not make reference specifically to looking at an attached map. It does references that the historic district is a zone, but it's not shown on the zoning map of the township. So that's another thing that's being corrected. We work with the planning board planner who has prepared this map, which shows the limits of the historic district. And also one of the things that we've done is, based on the recommendations from your existing master plan and the 1994 report, is recognize that parts of the historic district are maybe more worthy of a tighter standard than others, but at the same time acknowledging that the entire district is not the same, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, the High Street corridor might require a certain standard for review versus other parts of the historic district which are less visible to the travelling public and maybe is not as important to the preservation efforts of the community. So in doing that, what the recommendation was that...
Excuse me, could I ask a big favor? I'm sorry. Can you put the map on the table maybe? Or up? No one can see it. Thank you. That's all right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Would you like a copy?
Yeah, is it in this packet or no?
Is it attached to the back of the ordinance?
I don't believe that one is, the ones I made to you.
I'll make sure you get a copy.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to be able to see it while you spoke.
No problem. So part of the recommendation, based on your existing documents, was that a portion of the historic district be removed and the district line be redrawn. And the map that's included with the back of the ordinance, and as I said before, the current ordinance only includes a list of streets, listing one side, both sides, and then an intersecting street or alleyway. So part of what this revision will do is incorporate the historic district into the zoning map, so it's there for everybody to see. And in doing so, creating the High Street Historic District, which is referenced in the ordinance for a certain standard for review, and also what's known as the the Historic District Number 2, which is the balance of the municipal historic district. Now, as can be shown on the map that's attached to the ordinance, this map here, which is what was attached to the ordinance.
Is this the ordinance you're referring to?
It's not a public, it's not a question and answer session at this point. The public can make comments afterwards, so if we can allow Mr. Reese to give his
I'm not
presentation.
saying it's a question and answer. We're just trying to follow what he's speaking about to the public. Thank you.
The historic district, as it's currently within the ordinance, is all shown in this pink colour here. And that's referenced by street within the current ordinance. This revision, if adopted, would maintain the balance of the historic district with the exception of this area along Rancocas Road and a section along Madison Avenue and a small section along Washington.
If you want to set that down, I think everybody saw the map. I mean, I know you're trying to juggle some things there, so there you go. It's hard to hold that.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the revised ordinance is referenced by incorporation that to the zoning map and eliminates the section of the ordinance known as 149-162, which described the district by boundaries, which was all the street names. So if you were to revise that section of the ordinance, you would be striking out King Street East, Washington Street to Rancocas Road, King Street West, Rancocas Road, Rancocas Creek to Rancocas Road, Madison Avenue East, Washington Street to Block 71, Lot 1. Rancocas Road, South, King Street to Block 40, Lot 1. Reed Street, both its entire length, and just leaving it as the east entire length. So as part of the ordinance revisions, one of the things that prior master plan re-examination reports had called out for was for a fast track approval process to be written into the ordinance. That was written into the ordinance, although it wasn't clear in terms of timeframes that the board or commission chairman had to act on the review of a particular application. So somebody could submit or approach the commission chairman for a fast track application, but there wasn't an exact procedure in terms of timeframes for action and how for that chairperson or designated person to review a fast track application. So that's now been put into the ordinance so that a homeowner or a business owner and the commission chairman who would be responsible for a fast track application has a criteria to go by. In addition to that, one of the things that was called out for in prior master plans was for a review criteria to be put into the ordinance for when an application is needed before the Historic Commission. And that was inserted into the ordinance and generally followed a commonly accepted approach of how a commission should review any particular application for all applications, for applications involving demolitions, alterations, new additions or replacements. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I can go through the ordinance in more detail or answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. I work close with you, but if Dwayne or you or Jason have questions, now would be the time to ask them.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the, I guess, deletions from the ordinance, which are, from what I was hearing, it kind of made sense as best I could follow them. One of the things that struck me when reading the ordinance the most is the commission itself, and that being of its members, and in particular, class member A per se, and I guess for that matter B. But we took out of this the citizen requirement. Is that for a percentage of that commission? Is that just one person? Or is there a requirement that 4/5 of the board be residents?
It can be written in that 2 members, if that's what the governing body would like. I believe that's similar to what. See, part of the reason that some communities don't reference a citizen requirement for a certain class member, for example, a Class A member, is that they're not able to obtain the volunteers within the community that would meet the CLG requirements, which Mount Holly is a CLG community, to have a member volunteer to fill that position.
Yeah, I remember when I first joined the commission that we had employees of the township on the board with me, but Class C says they can't be an employee. And that employee of the township at least had knowledge of the township because, he was an employee. I'm not sure if it makes sense to have some sort of requirement for A and B. I don't know, what was the discussion, I guess, during it?
Class A and Class B, unless I'm mistaken, is able to be a municipal employee. So that would enable a municipal employee to take the position.
Okay.
And I believe that that's why, in the
Class
class...
C addresses the living within town issue.
Correct. Class C, the remaining 3 regular members shall be designated as Class C. Class C members shall be citizens of the township who shall hold no other municipal office, position or employment except for membership on the planning board, and who shall have a demonstrated interest, competence or knowledge in historic preservation. And so that criteria isn't referenced for Class A or Class B, so that would imply that they're able to sit, and that could be a legal question that you refer to George.
Well, as long as it makes sense, more so than legal or not. I mean, we're writing the ordinance. I'm assuming that we can, until somebody challenges it, we can,
It's
write the
appropriate
ordinance.
under all the land use laws involving historic preservation. Class A does not have to be a member of the township, nor does Class B, although it does indicate clearly preferences given to residents who have that appropriate knowledge. Class A being the building design and construction and architectural history, and B being a person with knowledge of local history.
Okay. And in the old days, I mean, when I first got on the board years ago, we did not have quote unquote a consultant. And then we thought for consistency, it made sense to have a consultant. And then we had one of those, and of course there was a charge for that. Does this ordinance allow for a consultant or not recommend a consultant. I didn't see in here where.
Yeah, it doesn't specify one way or the other, but I know, when talking with Kevin, most historic commissions employ a consultant when their board members on the commission aren't fully knowledgeable of all the historic aspects of the town, the rules, regulations for the review process. If you get the people that are on there that really understand what they're doing, then it doesn't really require necessity of expenditure of having a consultant, unless you have an application that really.
149-63, section D deals with that, and it does indicate that council can budget for it, of course, and it's subject to the council's budget requests.
And that's typical for a historic commission setup such as this.
So, in your experience, because, number one, I mean, in Class A, made sense that it could be a consultant. But then the line previous to that says without compensation. So.
That's your members, and then if the experts deals with someone who would not be a voting member, but, the consultant could certainly, if one is employed, provide advice. For example, there are certain grants and things for which you need a consultant to sign off upon, and we, in fact, during this process, we had that issue, something we had to meet the deadline, and we had to go back to the historic consultant and have them sign off on it. I believe that was completed. We'll discuss that later. But there are times where you want to have that expert, particularly because there are grants available, and to be able to utilize that expert. But that is different than the member class. The consultant would not be a voting member of the commission.
Okay.
The setup that you have within the ordinance, that the fast-track administrative approval process that's written into the ordinance, which is something that's allowed for in the municipal land use law, does give the ability for your commission chairman to take on quite a bit of the responsibility for the minor applications, which the way the ordinance is now written, that commission chairperson can consult, if need be, with a consultant, should you hire one, in order to determine, the most expeditious and efficient way to handle the applications as they come in. So your ordinance did and does have an administrative approval process that can help limit the cost to the town in terms of the amount of work a consultant would do.
Okay. And, I think there were 24 pages of this ordinance, if not more, with some of the other. In your review of the old and the new, what jumps out at you with this ordinance that we're correcting from the old ordinance? Other than changing the district, like you said, those properties, what's the biggest change in this ordinance?
Clarity in procedure, process, and responsibility. And an updating to be more consistent with your master plan and what I believe your ordinance should be. Your existing ordinance has a section regarding the cost of approvals if mandated by the commission, if they're to be so excessive that a homeowner or a business owner isn't able to achieve a financial plan to meet those costs, that they can appeal to the governing body for you guys to determine whether or not to help offset the cost, or to amend the approval from the commission. And I don't think that that's something that your current master plan, when you read some of the guidance that's in there, is consistent with, because your current master plan talks about fast tracking, alternative materials, ways to make things more user friendly and stimulate economic development, and the approval of the district in terms of upgrading and making it more feasible for people to be able to do improvements to their properties.
Okay, so you're saying this allows for that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it provides more guidance, not just for a potential applicant, but also for the commission. Both groups are encouraged to read the ordinance in terms of what the goals and objectives are, which are listed up front in the ordinance, so that there can be a meeting of the minds of what this is intended to achieve. It also, cleans up a little bit of some confusion about an appeal process that is available to an applicant should they feel that their project should have been approved but was not.
Kevin, can you just give an example for the public and for the council? And I think we dealt with one when we were discussing this, where in the past, someone had to go to the Historic Commission, possibly wait that time, whereas now, you could just get that immediate approval with the minor things, so we're not having to put the public through that for what is essentially a basic minor repair. Can you give us a good example of that to give an idea how this is much more user-friendly? Because I think that's one of the important factors on correcting this ordinance.
Window replacement. Some windows don't necessarily need a construction permit in order to be replaced. The way the current ordinance is written and the way it was being handled is everything, regardless of whether or not it needed a permit, needed to go to the Historic Commission. This clarifies that that's not the case. And depending on the type of window replacement that a property owner wants to do and the building classification that it is according to the forward report in the district that it's in, it's something that may not require approval at all, or could be approved by the commission chairperson through an administrative approval, if it meets the criteria that's outlined. Now, I'm not saying that the chairperson before couldn't administratively approve something that didn't require a permit, but that wasn't spelled out in the ordinance.
Nor do I think that person felt comfortable based on the unclarity of that ordinance. That ordinance is 20 years old, and it was one of the first positions I held here in town, and it was a moving target. So depending on what week you were there, the outcome. So I think something more consistent with some guidelines that you can refer to that's updated and accurate makes sense. I mean, there was no question about, folks were afraid to come before the Historic Preservation Commission because it just didn't seem consistent enough. And this, at least, I'm assuming, puts us down that road where consistency is very easy to follow because the guidelines are already there and updated.
That's correct. It's not going to solve all the problems, though, when there is a grey area that needs to be addressed, and that's why you need to rely on either your historic preservation consultant or your municipal attorney, which is really or the zoning officer, which when there's ever a need for an interpretation, that's who should be doing the interpretation, not the volunteers on the commission. Now, one of the things that this does is one of those grey areas that, or one of the questions that George had just asked was an example of when did something maybe come before the commission but may not have needed to, is within the forward report, which is kind of referenced in your existing ordinance, with key, your truly special buildings, your contributing, which contribute to the overall character of the historic district, and then your non-contributing buildings, which don't recognise as not really being too special for the district, but may require some type of review. But then you have a list of criteria for a brief list in your existing ordinance of what should be exempt from review. And so when you read a small section of that, it tends to appear that every single thing that needs a permit or doesn't need a permit that could change the way something looks must come in for a commission approval. But then when you read a few lines down, it talks about a non-contributing building not requiring a review when you're doing an alteration. When you read the definition of alteration, that is a change in the appearance, but as long as you don't increase the size of or the volume of the building, or you're not demolishing it, then that doesn't need a review. So this tries to clean up some of that inconsistency and spell out clearly what doesn't need a review and what does need a review. Now, having spoken with your construction office, one of the things that they've suggested is, in the future, when more revisions are made to this ordinance, that even more clarity is given to sheds, fences, and pools. Because not all sheds require a construction permit when they're less than, I think it's 100 square feet.
Correct.
So, this isn't going to solve every single little problem that could arise, but it goes a long way to addressing some of the problems with your existing ordinance in terms of clarity, process, and procedure. It spells out how an application gets handled when it gets handed at the municipal building so that a homeowner can see what is the procedure that needs to be followed by the municipality and what they can expect in terms of the handling of their application.
Did we revise an application? Like, do we have a new application? Because that other one was a lot.
I have not revised the application form.
think that's something we should take a look at. Because that thing was, it's a little confusing.
In one of the other communities that I work in, the application form had been modified by the commission and the commission consultant over a number of years, and there was inconsistencies with what people were being handed out and what was available for download online. And the reason for that was the application form itself was not part of the ordinance.
Right.
So with it not being part of the ordinance, it's not required to go before the planning board or the governing body for an approval for it to change. That's something that the governing body could consider doing if it's not part of this ordinance already. And then that gives any desired changes to it in the future would give more control to the governing body in terms of oversight and what's expected. However, if you have a volunteer group of historic commission members that are active and really want to put in the effort to have that revised on a volunteer basis, your municipal attorney's able to review it and give a resolution of approval from the governing body rather than it following the ordinance process. I understand is another way to keep it.
Okay. I think that we should look at that, definitely look at that other application and see if we can clean it up at the same time, I guess, and make it more user-friendly at the same time. That's all I have.
Luke? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing portion. So if there's any residents that would like to make any comments on this ordinance, please kindly raise your hand, stand up, and for the records, clearly speak your name and address for the record. And if you can't come up because our recording device is up here, please.
Joyce Wright, 208 Mill Street. I'd like to know if there's any more copies of the ordinance available. I do live in the historic district and have attempted to make changes on several things and have been kind of stalled in the process.
I'm sorry to hear that, and
Yeah.
I'm sure the town would be happy to help you with the application process. If you have any questions regarding the form that needs to be filled in, or even if your project even needs a review by the commission.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on behalf of this ordinance? Come on up, please.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks for putting the map down so I could kind of see what was going on. Julia DiCamillo, my property is at 77 Pine Street, Mount Holly. As far as non-conforming and conforming, if we could just kind of clear that up. What has happened in the past in Mount Holly, because I think that the constrictions and the costs that came with abiding by the historic regulations, people just did stuff either after hours behind your backs or on Saturdays and the neighbors didn't call. And now you may have a conforming structure that is now non-conforming and nobody notices. It's just amazing that someone might have had, you know, historic double-hung windows in that half a double, and now all of a sudden they have a bay window that goes across the whole front of it, and now you look at it and it's non-conforming. So you can't undo what was done in the past, but moving forward, I mean, we can all kind of tell what is a conforming or contributing and non-contributing structure, but how are we going to monitor or at least enact what seems to have happened with this whole process? And this is just from talking to people in my experience from the years on the planning board and people that have tried to work with it and people that have been on the historic preservation board, is it got top heavy. It just really got top heavy. Like there were so many regulations and the people on the board trying to enact it and people trying to understand it, and then the general public who maybe didn't understand it and were afraid to approach it because now they're under the magnifying glass, that we just want to make sure we don't have someone that says, well, I can't do what you want me to, so I'm going to do it on a Saturday and nobody's going to see it. and now we keep bastardizing our homes. And we don't want that, but we don't want to put undue burden on someone either who maybe needs to make some upgrades to their home, but can't do it within the cost factor of historic preservation. Am I making sense?
Yes, and Kevin addressed that when we were talking about making it more cost effective for the residents. to
I'm
do their
sorry, I
upgrades.
missed that.
Yeah, there was a section that he spent some time on,
Is-
Kevin, if you wanna.
Is there something in here in the ordinance that addresses that maybe when I read it or
Yeah,
for
there-
clarity's
Yeah,
sake?
does anybody mind if I talk for a couple more minutes?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so let's go to, let's call it page 1.
Okay.
Purpose. So try to put the purpose of the ordinance right up front.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, safeguard the heritage of the Township of Mount Holly, preserving those elements of the natural and built environment of the township which reflect its cultural, social, economic and architectural history. I'm going to jump through a couple of them because I think they might address some of your concern. 3, stabilise and improve property values and facilitate, not hinder, municipal redevelopment. That includes homeowner projects that are trying to attempt to redo their home. I'm going to move along to item 7 on page 2, encourage beautification and private reinvestment, which is the private homeowner. Item number 8, balance historic preservation with the economic development goals and quality of life of Mount Holly residents. 9, not be overly excessive as to be an economic disincentive to improving an existing property or choosing Mount Holly as a new home or place of business. And these are goals and policies and objectives that applicants are encouraged to utilize during their presentation to the Historic Commission if they need to go before the Historic Commission. But they're also criteria that the Historic Commission itself needs to be aware of, that they need to be following in balancing their decision on the type of application that somebody may put before them in terms of balancing the cost versus the benefit of mandating an expensive improvement. 10, guide the advisory recommendations of the Commission so that properties within the historic district may utilise modern alternative materials, be feasibly maintained, repaired and upgraded. Item 11, not require or prohibit any particular architectural style. Rather, its purpose is to preserve the past by making the past compatible with and relevant to the present. To that end, new construction upon or near a landmark or within the historic district should not necessarily duplicate the exact style of the landmark or district. However, it must be compatible with and not detract from the landmark and or historic district. There's another section of the ordinance where it deals with alternative materials and guidance in terms of,
I see that, that's page 16 and 17, correct?
page 7, 16 deals with the beginning of the administrative approval process, which is spelled out now. And at the end of that section, dealing with several building elements, it has the following statement, which is a footnote to the preceding building items. Material and design. Although applicants are encouraged to install windows, siding, doors, roofing materials, shutters, downspouts and other building elements that are made of the same material and of the same design appropriate for the period when the structure was built, it is not necessarily required by this ordinance, and a suitable alternative material and or design may be administratively approved for 1, contributing properties outside the historic district, High Street Historic District, and 2, contributing properties within the High Street Historic District. When the item feature is changing material only and is not visible from the High Street corridor or connecting side streets, design changes require Commission approval.
So you're saying it is visible, then it would need their approval.
In terms of if you're changing the design and wishing to change the material also. Because that's one of the, I'm sorry.
No, that's, I think, I mean, I understand the intent. I think it's the execution that is more of a, like I saw as more of a concern, and there just was so much confusion. There are many classic examples. Like one of the people had the historic stained glass windows, and they just ripped them all out. Okay, I understand windows were not something that was able to be enforced by the Historic Commission because, if I'm not mistaken, it's a federal law that you can't tell someone what type of windows they have to have unless their property is deemed historically designated historic. I could be wrong. So they got to rip the windows out and just put, you know, not even Anderson's, just some windows in. And I think that's because there was no monitoring, or it was just deemed not historically pertinent to the area. I understand that. Then you have someone else that maybe goes to a contractor and says, well, I want to put new siding on my house. The contractor says, okay, you're in the historic district, but we're replacing leg and seam, and they go ahead and do that, and then they find out, no, you can't do that because you're in the historic district, so you can't use aluminum siding, period, and that becomes a huge catastrophe, which it did, at a huge expense. It was a catastrophe within the town. So I understand the intent, and I think it's all well and good. Believe me, I think we need to preserve what we have, not put a burden on the homeowner. I think we just need to make sure that we don't make more rules and regulations and laws that we can't enforce, or at least have someone who oversees to work with regularly instead of it. Making sense?
Yes, and the intent of this revision to the ordinance is to not put in place any more rules or regulations that would cause a burden to a homeowner, a business owner, or a potential investor.
Shrink it, hopefully, correct?
Shrink what?
The confusion that was maybe there.
Correct.
Or combine it.
Right.
Correct.
And if any residents have any comments regarding the ordinance that they feel doesn't go far enough in terms of clarity, you should mark them up and hand them to the municipal clerk for consideration by the administration and the administration's professionals.
Given one thing that I think, I know I brought this up before, might help as far as residents understanding is based on the ordinance, perhaps put together a 1 or 2 page FAQ on what it means as a homeowner living in a historic district, as if you were in a contributing or a non-contributing, or one that was actual critical, and kind of like the quick questions that most homeowners are going to ask, like, can I replace my windows? What's the approval process? What's the cost? Things of that nature. And then they'll be able to look at that and clearly understand in a matter of minutes, as opposed to trying to translate the ordinance, where you and I may have spent months reviewing it and able to pick out a section, but that may be something that can be clearer. And then obviously for those more complicated applications that require, you know, design overhauls or type of material changes on a distinctive piece on High Street, then at that point, you know, the fact FAQ is not going to cover it. That's going to be more of a lessons learned session as you come before the Historic Commission with that type of application. But for them, I would say for 90% of the applications that come by, which are pretty much the boilerplate, I'm changing a window, I need a new roof, I got to put siding up on my thing, I want to fix my porch, but the spindles are custom done 40, 50 years ago, whatever it is. Those are the typical applications that come before the board.
No
And I think
problem.
that FAQ might help.
I can put that together, and then the Historic Commission would be able to add to it and maintain it on either the municipal website or as part of the application
It
packet.
could be stapled right to the applications. People just have 2 pages of questions and answers right there for them to know. And on top of that, they're not calling the township clerk or historic, you know, chair and all that kind of stuff, trying to get a very simple answer that could be done on a piece of paper.
No problem, Mr. Mayor.
It would be nice if we could run a story that Mount Holly's become more historic friendly. Rose?
Was that here to the reporter in the first one? Louis, I see
How
you have a
about the
question.
user-friendly Historic Commission, Rose?
That would be nice.
I think Louis still good. I'm very resident there for 370 South North. My only question is, this order would be easy or harder to get a solar panel installed?
Easier or harder for what?
The solar panel
Solar
installation.
panel.
In the historic district.
It would depend on how the property is designated, whether it's non-contributing, contributing, or peak, and how the solar panel is located.
Rather than like in ground, for example.
The township may have an in-ground mounted solar panel ordinance that would govern that installation. It's just, I mean, how big are we talking? And is it visible from the street? If it requires construction permits and it's within the district that requires a review by the commission, then that's something that they may need to review. The ordinance itself doesn't specifically address solar panels as an individual item.
Okay, that's my question, Commissioner. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Louis.
Randy Rothwell, 33 Union Street. I'm just curious, in this section that you're proposing to take out of the historic district zone, are there any key or contributing buildings in that zone, in your opinion? And if there are, how many? I'm just
The short answer to your question is yes, there's both. Key and contributing. This is the area that's proposed to be being taken out, and there are a few contributing buildings within that area. There's this one,
Could you give the name of the streets?
Rancocas Road, is the one street where there is a key building. These little green dots on the map, which will also be included on the zone map, are all the locations of all the key buildings as designated in the 1994 forward report, which is incorporated into your master plan and then adopted by your ordinance. That's why it's shown this way. That being said, you already have a couple of key structures on, or at least one key structure on Madison Avenue that's people have thought or believed was within your historic district, but it is not. Right, so part of what the governing body would need to do in terms of whether or not they would want the Historic Commission to continue to review applications for these outlying properties is decide whether or not these two particular properties should be continually reviewed by the Historic Commission. It can become problematic when you have outlying properties still under review but not necessarily connected to the district. So it's not my opinion whether or not these are designated or should be designated. They are in fact non-contributing, contributing and key. But we're proposing that they just be taken out in terms of continuity with the rest of the district.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we close the public hearing portion of the second reading of the ordinance, bringing it back to council. If anyone has any questions, now's the time, otherwise I entertain a motion.
I have no questions.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2014 on second reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Belton?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes, ordinance passes. Will be live in 20 days. Next portion of the meeting, we have matters to be presented by the public. This is the public portion, so at this moment you can say anything you want, pretty much. Questions, answers on resolutions that are in the agenda or not. Members of the public are invited to submit comments during the public comment portion of this meeting. The council pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act will not publicly discuss personnel matters and may choose not to respond to comments made by members of the public during this portion of the meeting. However, the council will give all comments appropriate consideration and will refer all individual complaints to the township manager or appropriate township representative for resolution. Each citizen will be allotted up to 5 minutes to speak in order to allow everyone an opportunity to express their opinions or concerns. So again, at this time, I open up the meeting to the public, and those who have questions or comments, please raise your hand. We'll pick one at a time, and please state your name and address for the record.
Randy Rothwell, 33 Union Street. Just a few updates. We had our last tree identification training for the community stewardship incentive program grant. And the one thing that we noticed, we're doing walking around primarily the historic primarily. One thing that I noticed, and this is just kind of for practices in the future, if we ever get around to planting tree planting again, street trees. One thing I've noticed, and I never really noticed that much for if we're gonna use stakes for trees, we gotta make sure we get them out before the trees get too big. There are tons of trees in town with the original tree planting stakes, metal stakes, growing right out of the trees. There are places where there are actually signs, like no parking signs or whatever, growing through the trees. So we have to be, as the tree gets bigger, we have to make sure we do a little bit more maintenance. I mean, there's like wire cages that are growing through trees, and all of that damages the integrity of the tree, obviously, because as you destroy the outside bark, which is part of the vascular system of the tree, which sends nutrients from the leaves, the sugars that are made back down to the roots to feed it. If you do too much damage to the outside of the bark, you're going to eventually, damages the tree, somewhat significantly. So this is something that I've never really paid that much attention to, but it's all over town, especially on the as the trees get bigger and older. I did also, was able, all the trees, seedlings that we planted for Arbor Day in 2013, I actually went out this weekend and put some mulch around them and started putting some little small protected tree guards around the bottom of them to help hopefully prevent the beavers from completely trimming them down, as well as to protect them again from weed whacking. Especially young trees are very vulnerable to cutting too close with a lawnmower or weed whacking, because again, as soon as you damage the bark around the entire part of the tree, that tree's gonna die. The one thing I also just want to mention for the Milldam project, I'm really glad to see that's going forward. I think it's going to be a great improvement to the parks. The one thing, well, actually two things. One thing that on the proposed new plan, I know you're going to extend the walking path, and you're talking about putting an asphalt pavement in there. I truly suggest to look into just, instead of just doing asphalt, look into pervious asphalt paving. I mean, it is a flood zone area, and
Randy, so you know, it is being looked into.
Okay.
One thing they're waiting back is for NJDEP to let us know if even we can put any type of impervious that close to the peak
well,
area.
a pervious pavement you should be able to use.
They're still a little,
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, it said, I
that.
wouldn't put just impervious, because we already know it's already is impacted during flooding, so you don't want to put any more impervious pavement that unnecessary.
yeah, I'll bring up with Kurt the porous absorbing
Okay.
stuff, the asphalt. I know that we were gonna consider just extending the redstone if we couldn't do
Right.
blacktop, but
Yeah, I just noticed that. And the other thing I noticed, I saw a schematic even of the projects that's going on now, and it looks like it would be maybe putting some more additional trees in there. I can't remember if that was part of it.
there's a big landscape plan that
There is a big landscape,
Yeah.
but in that case, I don't know if the landscaping has been decided upon, but I do have a couple of lists. So I know more about trees now than I ever thought I'd know from these, taking these training sessions. But I'll leave this here. I have just a list of potential other trees that might be considered. Since it is a park, I mean, you can actually put fairly large trees in it because you're not impacted by sidewalks and streets, whatever. So I just kind of put together a list that might be considered for the park. And there again, once you do put that in, you're gonna have to do some kind of beaver protection, either some sort of fencing around it so the beavers don't take down the new trees that you put down in there. Or the other thing they can do, you can put actually paint it, I mean, it kind of might look kind of silly, but you can actually paint the trees from like, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet out with a textured paint, which prevents beavers from eating the tree. In that case, you wouldn't have to necessarily worry about taking fencing around as the tree grows too. So something that you might want to consider, because you certainly want to put the money into landscaping, only to have the beavers that are in there, which we know are abundant, to take your really planted trees down. And last note, as everyone has heard, that my goat grazer for the mount kind of backed out just as he was about ready to put up the fencing, and actually left one piece of fencing up on the mount. Well, it's not dead in the water yet. I actually, since that article came out, I've gotten 4 calls from 4 other goat grazers who are interested in doing the project. 2 of them are
stop
local.
laughing, Rose.
Two of them are local that really don't have experience, but they're actually 2 commercial companies that do it. One out of New York, up like mid-state New York, and one out of Lancaster County. And I'm talking to both of them, and a decision will be made
And
soon.
they understand the amount of grant that we have. Do we need to follow an extension?
Well, yeah, I already talked to Sydney, New Jersey, and they said based on the situation that shouldn't be an issue, that they would be able to extend the grant.
They were understanding that the vendor that was coming back down.
Yeah, I already talked to them about that, and that won't be an issue. We may actually, this one grazer from Lancaster said, yeah, I had to get him some more information, but he said if I wanted to go with him, he could probably get goods in within the next week or two, so we actually may still be on schedule if I was able to get someone in that quickly, so we'll have to, I'm just playing it by yourself. Lesson learned, always have a plan B and a plan C for any project, because
How soon
something
do you
like.
think we'll know on the plan B? As far as
I'm gonna
definite?
decide this week who we're gonna go with in timing, so
Okay. Thank you, Randy.
I think that's all, thank you.
Rose, you have a follow-up now.
Joyce Wright, 208 Mill Street. I just have concerns again about the Woman Lake. It's become very overgrown, to say the very least. There are places you can't even see the lake. And I'd also like to know the status of the part to the walkway and the dam that was washed out on that last storm. Hopefully that's going to be repaired soon.
So I think I'll be able to answer your questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we just received, I know I got a copy of the environmental report from ERI on options for the dam.
Okay.
So as of right now, options are being considered. With that being said, we were required by state wildlife and NJDEP to lower the water in the second lake, which required us to relocate the fish in that lake because of the dam that was broken during the heavy rainstorm, which obviously also affects the first lake, which is basically an island. I live right there. I see it. You can walk across it.
Are you doing the first lake from Branch Street?
No, I'm doing the first lake from Parkview.
Okay.
So Parkview and then going
Okay,
down to the lake over by Branch Street.
okay.
Which that one is fine. But nonetheless, we are still looking at grants that can possibly help us with the restoration of those lakes. We were in recent discussions with Triad, a company, months ago that we discussed, going for, as a company to go for grants for us for environmental cleanups, redevelopment. The lake's environmental side was one of the big priorities, and we, again, reiterated the fact that we want them to concentrate on their efforts to find available monies and things that we should be applying for to do the restoration. So it's not out of sight, out of mind. It's there. We live with it. It's just a matter of making sure we do it the right way and generating the appropriate amount of funds. It doesn't put too much of a cost burden to residents to get that restored. But we are working on it.
Okay, does that, when you say restoration to the lake, do you mean like dredging out, cleaning out? Or
We
does
have
that
to-
mean like the overgrowth?
I don't know an answer yet, because once we find out the money's available, there will probably be an environmental report and a study done on what we can do to remediate the lake. Whether it's aeration, whether it's removing some of the lilies, whether it's dredging and relocating the soil, there's a whole lot of different options that we have there. But right now, that's yet to be determined what that's going to be. But it is on, it's on the agenda to get done at some point.
So it's just not an easy fix?
And it's not an easy fix, otherwise we would have been
Township
ready.
just cut down some of them so that kids can go fishing. That's what we're saying, it's more involved in,
I'm
or
sorry.
it has to be more involved in.
The vegetation should not be cut down as that's part of the buffer between the lake and the wildlife and the park area. And Randy went through a really lengthy discussion on that about 2 years ago. I remember we had the application.
Well, I
about
think
the
there's
side there.
vegetation that may be needed, but not to the extent that you can't even see the lake. You know, I mean, historically, that's not the way it was for many, many years. It's only been the last few years that it's been allowed to grow up that way. Other than that,
Well, there may be some areas that should be maintained and cut back a little bit, but
Yes.
again, within the confines of what we need to keep as a buffer zone between the waterway and the pathway.
okay.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi, again, Julie.
Yes.
Pine Street. I have a question concerning roads, road repair and condition. And I know for the longest time, there's always been combining of, let's say, minds as to who was responsible for what, because High Street's 537, it's in Mount Holly, but it's a county road, and not High Street, I'm sorry, 537 is a county road, but it comes into within city limits. Then we have High Street come down, and that's in town, but 541 is a county road, correct? So,
Correct, High Street's county.
yeah,
537,
so
Washington, no.
as far as where the financial burden runs, how do we get it fixed? How do we make it work? That whole thing with keeping the big trucks out of town, and we just can't seem to do it when other towns can, and just the wear and tear that they have on our roads. But, it's a question, because one thing that really takes away from the pleasure of Mount Holly, and honestly, people say what a beautiful, quaint little town it is. But you kind of lose that when every day your kidneys are being pushed up through your diaphragm because of the condition of High Street, right there by the clock, or down at the corner, or Mill, or Washington, so I just didn't know, and especially with this winter we've had, and they're predicting 3 more like the one we just had. And they were pretty on target if you follow certain things. We never know, it's a crapshoot with the weather. Do we have any plan to, and hopefully the plan would be better than the $55,000 we spent on that little section of High Street about 11 years ago, that 3 years later was just a hot mess because the trolley tracks weren't taken up and it wasn't milled down far enough, and now there's all these deep ruts everywhere. I'm curious. It's just a hard ride, if you follow me.
I understand. One thing I can assure you is that in the past, there wasn't the communications between the township administration and the county, and as of recent, we've been in constant communication with bi-monthly meetings with the county, and we're working to work hand in hand, both through shared services and other means, to bring Mount Holly back up to the standards that all the residents want. So, again,
there's communication going on,
communication,
great,
working on it, and these are things that will get done.
Maybe funding more so, because it's not that I don't think that you, as the people that are governing Mount Holly, have the best intent to fix this. We don't have the money, and if you take it from Peter and to pay Paul, then Peter's not getting paid. And there should be, from my perspective, and I think other people's, that if it's a county road, the county should contribute.
Well, that's where having the open lines of communication and the better relationship will allow us to make sure the county understands that their roads through the township, whether it be High Street or 537, is in disrepair and needs to be fixed.
And that the people that do the work are held accountable, because if you do a job and it fails, you're questioned on it, right?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Louis, I know I saw your hand up.
Come on out.
I have time for the those look at the 370 South one. My first question is, can people donate funds like for the building parks or for the streets, other than the grant that you're gonna get? My question is because I went to the London Township, meeting just for one purpose. I see 2, residents there. I throw you $1,000, you could fix, parks. Could people do that right here in Mahoney? They said, well, $1 million a month donate to fix the bridge or the building. That's possible.
I don't
We
know.
would certainly accept donations, and the council would be entitled to accept donations for a purpose, of course. We're talking about fixing a bridge. It's a large-scale donation, and we don't have a specific fund set aside for a bridge, for example, but certainly there's other provisions in place, and you could talk to Eric about that after the meeting, and myself, I'm sure, as well.
I just see, it's nice to see people, helping the town. Second person, congratulations on your special day. And are you going to have a work session or you going to have a month meeting for the next 2 months? That's not.
We will have a work session on the week of the 16th as it pertains to the budget. But anything past that is yet to be determined.
For the summer, do you have once a month meeting for July, August?
We're having our regular meetings during those months.
Okay. Second question is, what the Mount Holly Council think of the future site for Starbucks and liquor stores in the 38? In your opinion? And clarification on whether an agenda item 1
I understand.
and 5, thank you for the 5. Clarify for the exceeds, what do you mean by exceeds?
The ordinance, resolution 2014-81 specifies paying a $20 tax bill or pennies.
Yeah, the key is the $5, right?
Shouldn't do that. General, yeah, it's $5, yeah. So if it's 501, we don't want you paying in pennies.
Oh, no, it's good. That's right, I heard from NASA, exceed for $5, it's still the same as this, right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're
Other this exceeds code, it's the same as the one before?
Oh,
that
we had
that
an
it
ordinance.
changed?
Did we have an ordinance before?
This is a resolution.
It's a resolution.
Yeah.
So we didn't have one before. This one
is
spells
new.
out that you can't exceed $5 in.
Oh, I didn't know that, man.
So,
Oh, okay.
I don't know if we
And,
had one before. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's one question I meant to ask Mount Holly Council engineers. Does Mount Holly have an elevation certificate for the west development as known as Mount Holly Gardens? An elevation certificate,
A what?
an elevation certificate, in case you want to get flood insurance. They say an elevation certificate.
Elevation.
Have to check with the engineer.
No, you don't have one?
I don't have an answer for you, Louis.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
have to check
appreciate
the-
if you could look
We'll
into
find
that.
it. We'll-
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Alan?
Al Hollowell, 121 Evergreen Street. Just a quick comment. The mill dam plan is great, and it's going to bring more people into the park. The problem is the parking down there. I don't know if you guys have been there, but I've been there the last 2 Sundays, and I guess it's mostly the weekends because of the ball fields down there and the kids and everything else. This past Sunday, it was like the cars are parked everywhere, and I guess it's more of a safety hazard than anything. So I was just wondering, rather than pave any more property at this point, and with the other plans you have coming with the tennis court and all, is there any way to open up that gate at the end of Wall Street and just let the cars park on the old hockey rink area, because that's paved? Or just in the grass there, because right now they're blocking that and they're blocking the homeowners, and if there's ever an emergency down there, you're not going to get a vehicle past. I'm thinking just on Sundays, if there's any way, just swing that gate open, let the cars park down there, or someplace out of the way, put up a few cones to show them where they can park.
Is this for the softball games?
Yeah, we had an event down there two Sundays ago.
Yeah, the players for those softball games, Alan, were instructed to park in Ironworks Park.
Yeah,
not in the middle
and
game.
some of them were, because that's where we ended up parking. But then Ironworks Park it's not so bad, but you end up walking like a park and a half to get to where you need to.
Understood.
But
All the leagues were told in advance because of the construction and everything
yeah,
else.
it was pretty.
That whole first lot was going to be.
It was pretty bad on Sunday. But I'm just thinking if they could park on that grassy area or something until some of it's resolved, it might help.
My only concern, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, my only concern would be that open that up with the season of the rain could lead to the ruin of the grass
Yeah,
area.
that's true.
You could
When
lead
it does
to
rain.
cars getting stuck into the mud
Right.
that's over there and requiring tows coming out.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a parking issue there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Okay, thanks.
I parked in Ironworks from walks. Yeah, it's just park at school, just go walk. Any other comments on the public?
Can I just say something real fast, and it's not, I'm sorry, I just forgot to say this. I want to thank the Mount Holly Township Police Department and New Shore Police Chief Steve Martinez for the outstanding job they're doing. And enough times we complain, we don't give thanks. And they're just a really stellar group of people that are acting in not only difficult times with kindness and compassion, but also it seems very human and reasonable judgment. And I'm seeing a big difference, I think. I don't know if anyone else is, but the response is quick, it's prompt, it's professional, and there's also, like, the human nature hasn't been left, like we're just here, you know, enforcing the law. So I
Well,
just
thank
wanted
you.
to say that, make sure it
It's
gets
far as
said.
routine when you get compliments as opposed to
Yeah.
criticism, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Definitely
say I
noted.
forgot.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting, and we're going to get to the consent agenda. With the consent agenda, we have resolution number 2014-81 as it pertains to payments being made by excessive coins. Resolution 2014-82, this is a resolution designating Sherry as the township registrar. Resolution 2014-83 is designating an alternate tax search officer. Resolution 2014-84, this is a shared services agreement with the County of Burlington. 2014-85, this is a resolution authorizing continued support of a Green Team under the Sustainable New Jersey program. And then 2014-86, a modification to the area in need of redevelopment designation, which was made a few weeks ago. And item number 7, 2014-87, which is a resolution supporting the application to the county for this year's 2014 open space grant application through CMA. That being said, anyone have any questions or comments on those resolutions? If not, is there action on the consent agenda?
I'd like 2014-86 removed from the consent agenda, voted on separately, please.
Is that fine?
Yes.
Lou,
Rob?
you good with that?
Yep.
All right, so that'll be a consent agenda for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
And just clarification on the registrar, that is an acting position, is that correct? Not as acting registrar, not registrar as you stated? Yes. That's correct, acting?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And a second, Lou?
That's a second.
A roll call, please.
Mr. Belton?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes. But I'll take resolution number 2014-86. Again, this is a modification to the area in need of redevelopment designation. We have a motion on this resolution.
I have a quick question about it first.
Yes.
I guess the bullet point is that we just took a couple of properties and basically said that we weren't going to invoke eminent domain on them. Is that it?
A couple properties were taken out and others were designated as non-condemnation.
So basically, some of the properties next to Buzz's Tavern were completely removed. Other properties, based on public feedback, were left in the redevelopment designated area, but like George says, they were removed from the condemnation aspect of the designation. Based on
But
this resolution.
there's still a significant amount of properties that are in a eminent domain situation, is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2014-86.
Have a second?
I'll second.
The roll call, please, Sherry.
Mr. Belton?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes. All right, next we have matters to be reported by the manager. Eric?
Council, I have one issue that I just wanted to update you with. In these times of trying to generate income, we have, administration is looking at an interlocal agreement with Galanco in the construction area. Mr. Saponaro is reviewing and preparing the legal documents for this, which would allow us to generate income from Delanco as being their construction official. I know that if you have any other questions, as Mr. Saponaro is reviewing this, we'll have it ready for you to review as soon as
Yeah,
it's done.
I follow up on that. It is a shared service agreement regarding some code work and inspections for that. I'm not sure who drafted the initial agreement. I had some objections to that. I forwarded it to I think it went to their solicitor already. I wanted Eric to look it over, and I'm sure he communicated with my secretary. And when we hear back from them, I'm pretty confident we'll still be able to move forward with some technical things and problems that I have with it so that the agreement wouldn't expire, so to speak.
That's all I have.
You have, George, you have anything?
Nothing else besides
Back to council? Luke? Jason? Wait?
No.
Oh, no, there's comments tonight. A couple things. Mark your calendars, July 5th, we have the annual Independence Day fireworks celebration. We also have hopefully, everything is on time with the park improvements. We also have the grand reopening of Mill Dam Park with the improvements that are there, with activities from 9 o'clock until about 1:30, in which then at 2 o'clock we start the Independence Day activities, and that will run from 2 o'clock until dusk with a stage, live bands, lots of food vendors, stuff for the kids, magicians, all that kind of stuff. That'll be in Ironworks Park. And actually both parks will be open, Mill Dam Park and Ironworks Park for that day. But that's all I have. So thanks for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And with that, we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.